Metal Dungeon, a roguelike dungeon crawler with lots to explore and plenty of enemies to kill. But is it good or bad? Let's find out on this installment of GXP Reviews. Metal Dungeon was released in North America on December 6th, 2002 for the Xbox. It was developed by Panther Software and published by Zycat Interactive. In the futuristic world of Atlantis, magic and technology are one. Plagued by war and famine, Atlantis has become a post-apocalyptic playground. In the vast underground weapons complex of Force Valley, monstrous cyborg armies are created to wage war on the fields above. In a moment of folly, the experimental cyborg known as Magan escapes and takes over the weapons laboratory and facility. Creating an army of enhanced weapon monsters, Magan entombs the gods of magic, turning Force Valley into a metal dungeon. Now a group of cyborgs known as the Enforcers are enlisted to take back the facility and plunge into its depths and root out the evil that awaits. The first complaint I have is a pretty big one to me. When you obtain a new piece of gear and equip it to your character, it doesn't appear to be represented on your character's model. Most other RPGs that I've played, if you equip a piece of gear, it'll show up with you wearing it on your character model. But not in Metal Dungeon. Kinda disappointing. After about 3 hours of playing, I finally bit off more than I could chew and got myself and my entire party killed. What I found afterwards was kind of a shock. There didn't appear to be any way to revive my party. Everyone was permanently dead and I had lost all of my items. When I made another character to try to revive them by going to the dock, they weren't available there to revive. Luckily, you can still reload your previous save point and get everything back, but if you haven't saved in a while, then you will have lost a lot of time and items. I could be wrong, you might actually be able to revive everyone if they all die, but I didn't find a way. The game has you exploring randomized dungeons, and when you end up completing one, you go back to the overworld. What sucks is that the overworld is just another menu screen where you can buy and sell items, revive teammates, take jobs, customize your party, and a few other random things. It would have been nice if all of that was instead in a real town area that you could walk around and explore. My biggest problem with the game by far is the lack of any real gameplay. I felt like all I was doing was navigating menus with brief moments of walking around. But that's literally exactly what I was doing. Now, I'm not a fan of turn-based or time-based games, so that could have an effect on my overall opinion of the game, but it just didn't sit right with me. Metal Dungeon is full of grinding. The entire game is pretty much just grinding and dungeon crawling. For some, that may seem fine, and even for me, I don't mind grinding in a lot of games that I play. But the problem I had is that after 3 hours, all of my party members were still level 1, and I really didn't find that many new pieces of gear or equipment. I also got stuck re-grinding level 1 over and over for more XP and looking for more loot, because if I went to level 2, they were a bit too tough for me at that stage. So just be aware that if you pick this up, you will be grinding a ton. Due to the amount of grinding, though, the game will have a long playable period before you beat it. Controls felt decent enough for a time-based attack game. The out-of-battle movement worked, although it could have been a little bit better, and the combat controls are just menus when you really think about it, so controls really didn't have much bearing on the game at all. Being that this is a dungeon crawler, you would expect it to have plenty of items to find. And you would be right, the game does have hundreds of items to find, such as weapons, armor, and various buff items. One thing that Metal Dungeon did impress me with was the amount of enemies in the game. On the box it said it has over 200 monsters to fight, and they weren't joking. Each level that I played through had vastly different monsters than the one previous. They also have very different attacks and abilities, keeping the game fresh. What I think will really drive people to get this game is how the dungeons are randomly generated. Every time you enter a dungeon, the layout will be completely different. And each level you go through has a different style to them as well. The game boasts that it has 100 randomized environments, and it certainly looks like it. In the end, Metal Dungeon just didn't do it for me. There felt like there was a lot of cut corners, and the gameplay overall wasn't that fun for me. The perfect way I can describe it is that it felt like an Xbox 360 indie arcade game. It's by far not a bad game though. I feel like that might open up after multiple hours spent in it, and I'm sure that you can get some really cool spells and gear along the road, but the grind for me is just too much. I do feel like there are people out there that would genuinely enjoy playing this. If you like dungeon running and turn or time-based combat, then you just might want to consider picking this up. The game is selling for around $10, but I was able to find mine at my local store for $4. Metal Dungeon just might be up your alley.